So intermediaries would be the most common solution to this problem, and they abstract the work of direct integrations, which makes the development and compliance work much easier for application developers. But intermediaries can come with fees and delays, and you're also vulnerable to things like vendor lock-in, and you're requiring your users to trust these third-party services with really sensitive financial data, like their credit card numbers. And this is something that should never be taken lightly. An alternative is for applications to integrate directly with their bank's payment processing services, or potentially even with various banks through APIs. But this method, it can offer at least lower transaction fees and increase the control that you have over the process you're taking your user through. But it does require then significant development effort. It's not always possible. Switching between institutions becomes really challenging, and this problem grows exponentially as soon as you consider scenarios that not all users have bank accounts. So if you're using a digital wallet or a mobile money account, these would require further custom integrations, and integration work is expensive, complicated, and error prone. So, wherever possible, we want to keep that down to a minimum. And this is where open payments comes in. And before I dive into this, I'd like to be really clear here that I'm not talking about open banking in a general sense. What we're talking about today is a specific open standard called the Open Payment Standard. And it's a standard that allows applications to access user accounts directly and securely. So the Open Payment Standard enables third-party service providers to interact directly with their users' accounts in a secure and standardized way. Custom integrations require new work every time you want to communicate with a new entity, like a digital wallet or a mobile money provider. But as soon as there's a shared standard, implementing that is done once, and then it opens up communication to every other institution that also uses the standard. So it just makes life much more simple and reliable. Every time you do this work, you introduce risk of problems. At Interledger, our big overarching mission is to make it as easy to send a payment as it is to send an email. And this is a really good analogy for how open payments works. If you think, if I have a Gmail account and someone else has an Outlook account, it doesn't matter, because our email providers communicate using this shared standardized language, allowing us to send emails seamlessly across providers. And to send an email, you don't need to know the other person's email provider. All you need is the email address. And this is how open payments operates. So similar to that email address, if an account provider implements the open payment standard, they'll provide you with something called a wallet address. And this wallet address is human readable. So it also consists of words instead of just a long string of numbers, like a credit card number. And it's also publicly shareable. So the same way you could share your email with a newly acquired acquaintance, I hope you would never do the same with your credit card number, which is something you should be keeping private. Open Payments provides a standardized way for third parties to communicate directly with accounts. So whether those accounts are bank accounts or digital wallets, it doesn't matter. And this communication is about creating payment obligations. So it's really important to note here as well that what we're not doing is transferring money. The actual transfer of funds is occurring on the settlement layer, which handles the movement of money between those accounts at the end of the day. But what Open Payments is doing is facilitating communication between these different systems. But those systems still need to connect and settle the funds at the end of the day. But there are advantages of this approach. So first of all, you avoid the risk of vendor lock-in with third-party payment gateways. Your users don't need to share that sensitive financial information with anybody. That stays between them and their account provider. And that's great for applications as well, because they no longer need to then be storing sensitive information, which always comes with the risk of data breaches and things like that. And I think this allows applications to be free to innovate in the payment space without being registered service providers or being reliant on others. And users remain in control of their transactions the whole time. Any withdrawals would require explicit consent, and users can define really fine-grained controls over what they're agreeing to. So that's the exact amount of money that can come out, over what time frame does this entity have access to their account, how often do they have that access, and how frequently do they have access. So is this a one-time thing? Is this once monthly, bi-weekly, whatever? And this ensures that there's transparency, and security, which provides this seamless transaction experience with transparent fees and enhanced control over financial data. And the way that Open Payments operates is through a RESTful API messaging system. And the first step in the process is the same as any other. You would go to an account provider, like a bank, for example, and you would open up an account. And if this account provider is Open Payments enabled, then the same way they would currently give you a credit card or an account number, they could now additionally also give you this wallet address. So every Open Payments enabled account is identified by one or more URLs called wallet addresses. So every wallet address is actually a URL. And this URL is an alias for the underlying financial account. Like I said, it's human readable and publicly shareable. Because it's a URL, it's also a service endpoint, so it provides entry for the API. And what is required is that the sender and recipient both have wallet addresses in order to transact using Open Payments. So it's not something that only one party can have. It needs to be on both sides of a transaction. And then applications only need the sender and recipient's wallet addresses to create a payment obligation. And then once created, the parties involved handle the settlement of those funds. So let's dig into a little bit more of how this looks and how it works. And in order to do that, I'd just like to run through a demo. We work with a testnet team to create this really amazing test wallet, which is busy going through a rebrand. So it will look slightly differently when you guys come and play around with it. But seeing as it's being launched today, we're going with the current version so that everything is working. But basically, an Open Payments enabled account would look just like any other. So if I have my account over here, I can click on it. You can see your balance. And most importantly, one of your account identifiers would be this payment pointer. And once I have that, it means that I'm able to go and transact with it. So the team have also put together this test boutique environment where you can go and try out like an online e-commerce experience to buy some really amazing things, like I think I'm in need of some luck today. So you can add that to your cart, go and check it out. And from here, if you wanted to pay using Open Payments, it would be as simple as taking that payment pointer, copying it across, and authorizing that payment. So you'll see at this point, it's actually taking me back to my wallet interface to make sure that I'm giving that explicit consent for this money to come out of my account. And I can simply accept that. And there we go, order complete, shopping done. So as you can see, this creates a really lovely, seamless payment experience. I hear someone's unmuted. I'm not sure if there's a question or... Okay. You know, in terms of demos, if any of you want to dive into this, we've also got a local Rafiki playground that you can run through all of these API calls using Bruno. And we've got some docs on that. So if you check out the Rafiki docs, you can see how to get that set up and running. And we've also got, you know, an example like mock account servicing entities. So when you're actually digging into Rafiki code, yeah, you can play around with that locally as well. So we've got some really nice resources to help people get a hands-on experience with what's happening. So now at least I think you guys have an idea of what I'm talking about. And, you know, you've seen one example. So let's kind of dig into what's happening a little bit more behind the scenes and go through this step by step. So for this example, I'm going to use an online music store where Bob Marley uploads his songs and he wants to receive payments when people download his music. And Alice wants to pay to download his songs. So using Open Payments, when you want to send or receive money online, you simply provide the application with your wallet address. And this wallet address, like I said, is a URL, and it allows the application to make queries directly to that wallet address to gain information about how to contact your service provider from there. And using the Open Payment Standard, the application can send that request then directly to your account, asking for that specific amount to be transferred from your account to the recipient's account. So Bob Marley uploads his song, uploads his wallet address, really simple interaction. Alice uploads her wallet address, and as simple as that, she can select a song she'd like to download. When Alice selects that song, she adds it to her cart, and it begins this payment interaction. The first step is for the Music Place application to query Bob's wallet address. It is a public endpoint, and this gives the app information about where to send queries to Bob's bank account. Next, the app will send a grant request directly to Bob's bank. So before client applications can issue any payment instructions, they first need to get this grant. And grants basically give you authorization using access tokens to carry out certain operations. This just ensures the integrity of every request. Signatures are required, which are generated following the HTTP signature specification. And our grants are based on GNAP, the Grant Negotiation and Authorization Protocol. This is a protocol that's similar to OAuth 2. On a side note, you may be wondering why we didn't follow the mainstream path of OAuth 2. And the reason is that OAuth is best suited for delegating access to information rather than delegating access to control. And we had issues with expressing the access scope only in a string, which is really cumbersome and error-prone. Whereas with GNAP, it's capable of authorizing a broader range of actions as JSON objects. So if you consider the authorization of a payment, it's not only the ability to make a payment that needs to be specified, but also the recipient, the amount, like I said, those time periods, the velocity of payments. And these complications are really difficult to account for in OAuth, but much easier to handle in GNAP. When a client makes a request for a grant, it specifies what permission it would like to have on a resource. GNAP allows us to make this request as part of the spec. Additionally, it's capable of expressing the limitations and caveats of those permissions it's requesting that we need to properly describe a payment. With GNAP, account holders have precise control over the permissions they grant down to specific transaction amounts and even setting time-based or velocity-based limits. And this allows third parties to initiate payments or delegate authorizations while keeping the security of the underlying financial accounts and payment methods intact. And what I love about this is, as a user at the end of the day, I feel so much more comfortable giving someone else access to my account when I have complete say over exactly what that access is. It's in no way a blanket access or free to be abused. So with these permissions granted, let's get back to our flow. The Music Place app can now request the creation of an incoming payment resource on Bob's account. And this incoming payment resource essentially alerts the receiver's account provider that money will be coming in, and the receiver creates a resource to track that payment in the system. When created, Bob's bank returns unique payment details to Music Place that can be used to address payments to the correct account. Next step, Music Place would make that grant request to Alice's digital wallet, and this would be a request to have access to create a quote, because after an incoming payment is created on the recipient's account, a quote must be created on the sender's account. The purpose of the quote is to indicate how much the transaction will cost. It's expressed in the user's account currency, and it includes all the fees that have been added. This is one of the really nice features of using open payments for e-commerce sales, for example, which would happen across currency, because this way end users can work directly in the currency they're already familiar with, and they don't need to worry about the foreign exchange fees because all of the fees will be present upfront in the quote that they receive. So they're never being blindsided by how much something is actually costing them. Then once that quote's been accepted, another grant request will be sent, and this grant actually requires more interaction because it is to create that final payment obligation. And like I said, the end user is always in control, so it's up to them to give explicit consent. And obviously for security, this consent is now between the user and their account servicing entity. So this consent flow needs to happen outside of the third-party application. So once the user has agreed to this amount as requested by their account provider, then this outgoing payment resource can be created. The account provider will tell the music place application, okay, the user has granted consent. The application will make that outgoing payment resource on the user's account, and this marks the end of the open payments flow. This payment obligation has now been set. The next step, like I said, this is now outside of the open payments flow, is actually getting that money from Alice's account and settling those funds into Bob's bank account. Obviously, at this point, Alice can download her song and enjoy listening to it. So let's zoom out a little bit to the bigger picture. You know, Interledger is about creating financial inclusion. So how does open payments relate to this goal? It promotes digital financial inclusion because it supports various account types with a single integration. And this means we can move to a world where any account type can be integrated into part of our digital economy. So right now, I think there are a lot of limitations around certain account types like mobile money accounts, where people find themselves in the situation where it's a way to get money between family members, for instance. But once the money arrives in the account, a lot of people might withdraw it as cash and take it outside of the digital economy and lose out on a lot of the benefits. So having a way to integrate different account types more easily into the digital economy gives everyone greater access to the conveniences and advantages of keeping your money digital. And we're hoping it will lead to a reduction in transaction costs as well. You know, open payments is an open standard. It's free to use. Development costs are lowered by integrating with a single standard. And this direct communication between third parties and users' accounts eliminates any unnecessary fees and delays from middlemen. And we're hoping this translates into a reduction of overall costs for the end users. Right now, transaction fees have a disproportionate effect on small payments, making up a far greater percentage of the payment than for cases where there are larger transactions. And this then also disadvantages people who are making repeated smaller payments. Open standards like this reduce the barrier to entry for developers as well. With open payments, developers can create direct payment solutions more quickly and at a lower cost without the need for custom integrations. And this democratization of development enables smaller companies and startups to compete and innovate. You know, as with all great things, there are some catches as well. For the system to work, both the sender and the recipient must have open payments enabled accounts. This requirement poses an adoption hurdle, which the Interledger Foundation is actively addressing. And we are dedicated to making the adoption of this as seamless as possible for financial service providers and for applications by providing extensive support and resources. But in terms of adoption, we don't have many active use cases that we can point to yet. I do believe this is a really exciting space for development and innovation. You know, we've got 2 digital wallets that operate in certain countries already that have integrated with Rafiki and are open payments enabled. So the opportunities for growth are there, and we're laying the path to keep gaining momentum in this space. It's important to note that integrating open payments doesn't guarantee a shared settlement layer. So that settlement layer in a payment system refers to the infrastructure and processes used to actually transfer the funds between parties to finalize transactions. This includes the mechanisms that ensure money moves from the sender to the recipient and all the parties' accounts are accurately updated. And it's the actual movement of your money from your account into someone else's account. Open payments is designed to enable different payment systems to communicate and transact with each other. But at the end of the day, those systems also need to be connected in such a way that they can settle the movement of money between accounts as well. I would say many financial institutions already have established pathways and processes for moving money between accounts. And our protocols, the Interledger protocol, automates and optimizes how these institutions can navigate this network. If you think of open payments as a way of sending payment obligations directly to the relevant account provider, then Interledger is about finding the best route through that existing network that allows funds to be transferred and payments to be completed. While open payments simplifies the initiation of payments, it doesn't guarantee that a route for completing those payments will always be found, so potentially leading to failed transactions. But as adoption of the standard grows, more people will gain access to an expanding and interconnected payments network, reducing the likelihood of payment failures. Of course, while some fees like currency conversion and bank fees may still apply, we are aiming to eliminate any of the unnecessary middleman fees so that we can have as direct communication as possible. Of course, there will be scenarios where middlemen are not unnecessary. If I have an account in dollars and you have an account in euros, it might be that our two financial institutions are not capable of doing that currency conversion themselves. And in that case, the middleman who could do that conversion would be necessary. So just to say, we're not always going to be excluding middlemen. It's about finding an optimal path through the system so that we're not racking up unnecessary fees, and we're also introducing possibilities into the network. So instead of only having one way to do that foreign exchange, there might be various options, and then the cheapest option wins. So that's another way to then bring down costs. So for developers who are interested in open payments, hopefully like yourselves, there are two different sides to this coin. First, we have account servicing entities, and these would be the people who handle the users' accounts and would need to implement the functionality that drives the open payment standard. We've done everything in our power to make this integration seamless by creating Rafiki. Like I said, that's our mono repo, which bundles all of this functionality for use out of the box. So as such, if you're an integrator with Rafiki and you expose those open payments endpoints, you can have open payments enabled accounts on offer. On the other side of the coin, we have third-party application developers. These would be the people making those e-commerce checkouts or charitable fundraising sites or subscription services or whatever it is. And in this case, we've also done our best at making the use of open payments as easy as possible by creating an SDK. Right now, we've only got support for TypeScript and JavaScript, but it is in our pipeline to add support across more programming languages like Python and Go, to name a few. Of course, the SDK is not essential either, because all of these requests are RESTful API calls, so they can be handled directly in your code as well. And all of this is outlined in our open payments documentation, which you can access via the developers portal on our website. If you would please go and check out interledger.org. If you're not using the SDK, it is going to be a little bit trickier because you'll also need some cryptography knowledge for handling the message signatures. I think one of the biggest barriers that we have actually for getting developers into this space is just getting into the ecosystem as a whole. Understanding all of the different concepts and the layers of the protocol suite and how everything fits together is really complicated. But, in that line as well, I think we've done some really amazing work as a company this year in trying to create better resources to add some more human-friendly explanations to all of these things. We've got some really great blog posts out now about open payments, why we chose GNAP for authorization. We've got a whole outline of the Interledger stack as a whole. So please do go and have a look at our technical blog on the website. And in the developers portal, you can also access all of the docs, which have gone through a lot of overhauls and updates this year as well to be in a really good state. So, that covers everything from open payments, Interledger, web monetization, Rafiki, etc. And this is also where we have really great dev implementations of things like Test Wallet and this Test Boutique, and all of these repositories are open source as well, so you can actually go and see real implementation examples of how this fits together, how it can be used, and how you can use it then in your own projects. So I would say, while there are problems in this space that we are working towards overcoming, and the biggest, I think, is this adoption hurdle. Change is always hard to kick off and get that momentum going. I think there's some really exciting possibilities in this space as well. Once the use of open payments is more widespread, we can dig into exciting use cases like web monetization. And I, for one, really love this idea. The Interledger protocol stack allows a system built on new, fast technology for rapid transaction processing capabilities with lower fees, which makes transacting in sense viable. So currently, you'd pay more in bank fees than the amount you're sending if you were going to send a really small payment, which is why many institutions simply set a lower limit on how much you can send at all. But as soon as you're able to stream really small payments live, it opens up some amazing opportunities. Imagine streaming payments to a website for as long as you're interacting with them instead of seeing ads. Imagine paying for the use of APIs like this. It's a pay-as-you-go system that moves us as the user back to the position of being a customer instead of being a product. And right now, we don't have good ways to make small payments on the internet like this. With micropayments, you could add an extension to your browser, enter your wallet address, and the sites that you visit would also put their wallet addresses into the header of their sites. And these payments can just stream without the need for manual interventions. So this, of course, could also be under your control in terms of opting in or opting out, setting payment limits, and so on. But it just feels like this could really change how the web works. So this is a space that creates so many opportunities for including more account types into a more diverse number of payment opportunities that they get to make and participate in. It creates these really radical new use cases. And I think, at the end of the day, if I'm an account provider, it feels quite empowering to sort of say, well, who do I want to give access to my account, instead of always being beholden to third-party payment gateways and feeling the vulnerability of handing over my credit card information repeatedly, which is personally not something I'm very comfortable with. So anyway, obviously in this space there's so much to cover, and I'd just always like to encourage you guys to reach out to us if you have any questions. We'd love you to get involved, ask, join our community Slack channel. We really are all about joining community. And on that note, I can't not take the opportunity to also mention we've got a really exciting event coming up. This month, the Interledger Summit is happening in Cape Town. I think by this month, I mean more like in 2 weeks' time. Of course, it would be amazing if any of you could join in person, but we do also have live links that you can watch, so you can see the event streamed as well. So to get those links, you can sign up to our newsletter, or you can visit the website. We'll have them up on the Summit homepage soon as well. And you can also just go directly to our YouTube page, which is at Interledger Foundation. So you can get them there as well. And from there, let's open up to questions. I'm going to stop presenting unless they get very technical. I can dive back into screens, but I'll rather see your faces. And my computer seems to be bugging out.
Hi, Sarah. There's a question from Mabu.
There we go. Go for it.
Thanks, Phyllis. Thanks, Sarah, for the presentation. Great one. It's not the first time that I attend one of the events related to open payment. And this time around, my question is not technical, and I hope you'll be able to answer, but it's more about adoption and actually being able to use it at the moment on the continent. So my question is, are there currently any non-bank or financial institution, for example, EcoBank, that has like operation in 34 African countries, that a startup or developer can reach out to and have access to open payment enabled wallet or account already, or is that still work in progress?
So we do have two digital wallets that are open payments enabled already. Like I mentioned, they are not completely globally accessible at the moment. So I would need to do a little bit of fact checking on exactly which countries they are supporting at the moment. So I think I'd rather move that question over to the Slack channel email if you'd like to reach out. But yeah, I think there's just also some transition in that space at the moment, which is giving me a little pause for hesitation in my answer so that I don't give you incorrect information. But yes, I mean, I think obviously we're very aware that without people having open payments enabled accounts, none of the rest of this has the infrastructure to build off of.
Thanks for that. I will check out the community and join at some point. But then maybe a follow-up question to that, if you can answer. I also understand if you can. Is it possible for a startup at the moment to apply to become an account servicing entity, or at the moment is only limited to established bank and financial institution?
It's absolutely possible. I would just say it's probably not a very easy process because as soon as you become an account servicing entity, the problem isn't so much integrating with open payments. I think that's really the easy part, and it's the part that we as the foundation have control over. But the integrators that we have had in the space, it's more the legal and compliance issues on the actual finance side. So you would need to be a registered financial service provider at that point, and that comes with whatever work needs to be done based on the location where you are and the regulations within that area.
Which I understand. Thank you very much, Sarah. And it makes sense, like if you can then partner with a bank like EcoBank or
Yes.
registered financial institution, then you don't have to worry about all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seems like maybe that's all. So we can give it another few minutes if people have anything that crops up. But just to say thank you for bearing with me. I know my voice has been taking some strain today, so I hope it was still audible. And then Phyllis, maybe let me hand back over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that session. That was really amazing. I learned a few things too. And for everyone, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to send a follow-up email with all the links I've been sharing in the chat. And if you want to get to learn more about Rafiki API, contribute to it, be part of the open source projects, I'm going to share links to that as well. And thank you so much for joining. If you're a Hacktoberfest contributor, feel free to check our repo as well and contribute. We also have some API endpoints that use Interledger, so you're also allowed to contribute with regards to that as well. Thank you so much and have a nice day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for attending. Bye.